Hey, gentlemen, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. Today we are in Daniel chapter 7. I'm going to read verses 15 through 16. Before I do, let me give a shout out today to all the brothers I met in Tennessee. Thanks for hosting me. I love you guys. A special shout out to those guys who made first-time decisions for Christ. Welcome to the brotherhood. And also to all those guys who decided to lead a group or join a group. Way to go. That's the best way to grow in your faith. So, diving into the text today, we got to remember where we are. So Daniel sees 4 beasts, and they're coming out of the sea. And then next he sees a great throne room and a judge who is going to disperse judgment. And then God hands over dominion to his son in the middle of it. And then here's what happens next. But as I read this, you need to know that it's going to seem like Daniel woke up from his dream, his night vision, but he's still interacting with it. Here's what he says. He says, "As for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions in my head alarmed me. I approached one of those who stood there, and I asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things." You know, guys, as men, when we see something that we don't understand, we instantly start looking for understanding. This is actually one of the features of being human. We look for reasons behind things. And as our confusion increases, if it does, our desire for understanding is also going to increase. But the problem with men is that most of the time in pursuing answers, we will seek human solutions or arrive at our preferred human answers. I see men do this all the time. They look to make natural sense of spiritual issues and problems. And as a result, they land on their own preferred interpretations only because, well, basically, they prefer them. And deep down, they know that their natural interpretations of issues happening in life and their preferences actually don't make a lot of sense, or they make a little sense, but not total sense. Let me give you just one example. Over the last couple of years, we have used the phrase, follow the science, when we know we haven't entirely followed the science. But we use that phrase because we have followed our human preferences far enough. Correct? Of course it's correct. But what I love is what Daniel does in this instance when he's trying to seek understanding. Within his night vision, when he's anxious and alarmed, he immediately is honest about his experience. He doesn't stand around in a crowd of tens of thousands of people and act like he knows what's happening when he doesn't. Remember, in this dream, he imagines that he's standing in a courtroom with millions of people gathered around where God and Jesus are dispersing judgment from the fiery throne, and Daniel's actually confused about what he sees, while no one else seems to be confused about it. That's because everybody else gets it except Daniel. That's because they know who the beasts are. They know the judge. They know his dominion. And it's Daniel who is confused. So Daniel does what he knows is right as a man. He asks someone he knows who understands to give him an interpretation. Fellas, I want to make 3 assertions today for you. The first is this. This text calls us to spend more time listening to God's truth by actually just simply reading God's word. You know, the Bible is the only truth. I mean, it speaks about all matters and contains all understanding that you would ever want. It gives us an understanding of every problem and contains a solution for every one of them. Reading the Bible is exactly like the experience that Daniel is having right now in that night vision. It's like consulting an angelic being in the courtroom of God and getting answers for every judgment that God makes into the unforeseeable future. That's what it is. I mean, it's way better than settling for human solutions that we contrive, which have a small, tiny, infinitesimal chance of actually working. Second, the journey to understanding always begins by being honest with ourselves about our anxieties. That's what Daniel does here. You know, most men are afraid to do what he does. Yet what he does is pretty simple. In his anxiety and alarm, he seeks guidance. You see, honest, open, and transparent men, I call those hot men, honest, open, and transparent. Catch it? Okay, good. Will find answers. And the sooner you start acting like this and doing this, the more you're going to become available to the solutions found in God's truth. Just be honest about it. You don't know what's going on. That's okay. Because there's a third assertion here, and it's tied to number 1 and 2. It's this. We have to find the right men to point us the way. And that's the third thing Daniel does well. He sees something that he doesn't understand, so he doesn't just make up his own interpretation of what's happening. Instead, in his anxiety and alarm, he asks someone who does understand and gets the interpretation. So fellas, what do you need to work on today? Is it spending more time in God's Word? Is it getting honest about your anxieties? Or third, is it finding a godly man to point you the way? Do not leave these questions on the table today. Do not leave them unanswered. Reflect on one of them and then do something about it. I love you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope this has blessed you. With that, I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.